Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I mean, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about.
Thanks, Chris. So my name is Stephen Lehtonen. I actually exactly a year ago this week launched a company called Kasvaa. It is a growth consultancy. I'm the managing partner and have a great team of folks that we've been working with to serve our clients to help them grow their companies. Clients typically come to Kasvaa when they're trying to do a few different things. Obviously, growth. It's in the name. Actually, the name Kasvaa. People ask me, "What the heck is that?" It's actually Finnish. The Finnish word for grow, which is an homage to my last name is Finnish. So
nice. Can you speak any Finnish? I used to work with Finns all the time.
I only speak Kasvaa. That's the only word I know in Finnish. I'm a bad Finn. So clients call us when they're trying to do a few different things to turbocharge their growth. One is just straight up sales and marketing. So if you have typically a founder who's trying to transition from founder-led sales to really enterprise or system scalable sales, where the movement is happening because of systems that are in place. Obviously, right. There's going to be sales resources, whatever, but we're going to work with their sales resources. We're going to work with their marketing team, and really, it's everything from the marketing, the brand identity, all the way to helping them close business. So that's a common thread, yeah. And then another one is this one's typically more with established companies, although you get brand new businesses that call us, but it's essentially go-to-market strategy. So how do we bring this stuff to the world? And oftentimes that's maybe a country that's international that's looking to enter the U.S. Or vice versa, and a U.S. company looking to go international. It could be just a new product, and we'll work with innovators that can really help with the product creation on the sort of design side, but also we'll come in and really think about the execution of how to actually roll this out and look at sales partners and distributors, that sort of thing. And a final one is just chief XO, CXO kind of work. So typically marketing, like I mentioned, or finance, where they really need someone to come in and just provide that heft. And then the other kind of layer that we'll provide there is strategy overall to try to help with growth. And I guess a final one is corporate development. So a couple of clients have us specifically helping them to think about their capital raise or acquisition M&A strategy. So whether that's through partnerships or looking at other types of opportunities. We have a client that just signed us last week that we're helping them to do a roll up. They just launched. They have organic business of a 2 million run rate, but they're thinking, how do we incorporate other partners in the world and try to get to a really nice valuation quickly through inorganic growth.
Excellent. And what you're passionate about? Is it your company, or are you passionate? Are the other things you're passionate about?
I am passionate about a lot of things. I gave a TED talk on this idea of passion, actually, specifically within education.
Nice.
So I at the time as an entrepreneur, I've had a couple different runs in entrepreneurship. At the time, I had started a nonprofit in after school education. So what it was we actually were a training ground for aspiring teachers. So folks that were either just graduated or maybe even in college and they wanted to go into the teaching careers. What we did was place them in after school programs to teach their passion, whatever they wanted. So they could teach.
Oh, interesting.
One guy taught bicycle maintenance, another person taught art and dance and all kinds of fun stuff, crafting, whatever. And the reason why we did that was, one, when someone's coming from a place of passion, it's a lot easier. The content, you've kind of negated that part, which is like, what's the best way to teach algebra? Well, if I love algebra, it's just going to come out, right?
Yeah.
And so what we did then was focus for these young teachers on the craft and classroom management, making sure that they were able to communicate and that they were really focusing their lesson plan. So we gave lesson plan review. We had expert teachers come into the classroom and give them feedback. And, the notion there is just that teaching is hard and that it's better to fail early so that you can succeed sooner, right? I think that's the IDEO line, right? So that same idea of how do we get teachers in a position where they can fail in an environment where the stakes are a little bit lower because it's after school and it's an enrichment activity. So that was that model. It's called breakaway education. So yeah,
Right.
so that was all on. So I gave this talk on passion. I love the conversation of passion. I love that you bring that up at the top. I have now. I'm passionate about my family. I'm passionate about my two daughters and the woman I'm married to, and I'm passionate about stand-up comedy, which is a weird thing. That's why I have this microphone here, is because during the quarantine we did Zoom mics to keep ourselves from losing our minds.
Nice.
But I've been back out there now. Hopefully, gonna be soon getting the Delta variant in through all my comedy clubs that I've been hanging out at. So we're I love comedy, and I think that's a funny connection point. But for me, you got the day job, you got comedy. Both those things, for me, it's about bringing joy to people's lives. And so when I work with small business entrepreneurs, when I work with new startups, this is the thing that matters more to them than anything in the world, except their family, hopefully,
Yep.
and maybe their God if they're religious, right?
Yep.
But basically, this is the number one thing. And so
Yep.
that's a precious thing that we get to do as consultants, is to help them with that, taking that forward and helping them grow that. So I consider that the reason for that, my mission, is to bring them joy in their life so they can make more people happy with their products and services.
Right.
In the same way with comedy, I mean, there's nothing, one of my greatest joys in the world is just to be in a dark room and then just see someone just like flicker their eyes and and see for a second just joy come across their face. It's just one of the greatest feelings. So yeah,
I love it.
That's my passion.
So how did you get into this? I mean, did you have a day job? Like, were you an employee at some company doing marketing, or what made you decide to do your own thing?
Do my own thing. So for the last 5 years, and I still work closely with a company called Growthink. So Growthink is a similar consultancy. They focus heavily on investment banking as well, Growthink Capital. So they work with similar type companies to help them with capital raise, Series A typically, Series B, and then M&A exit opportunities. So my role there is I head up their innovation practice. So very similar type stuff of helping clients that are looking typically within the lens of some sort of capital raise or an exit planning, is that we're thinking, how do we help them get to that next milestone threshold so that they can better accelerate their corporate development needs. And so in doing that, I was able to continue working with them. And then now launching Kasvaa. Yeah. Before that, I've basically been in consulting or entrepreneurship, one or the two, or now both, right? In every kind of move that I've had. So a lot of time in client services, just again stems out of that personal mission, but also doing startup stuff. So I've helped startups with their business development, direct sales for tech startups, and just something I love.
Well, what is it about startups that draws you to them? Like, what is it that pulls you in?
Yeah.
Have you ever? Yeah. I mean, have you had the full-time job for some big company or something like that?
Yeah, I've worked at some bigger companies, and I never really, I didn't last that long there, to be honest with you.
I know there's a particular mindset, right? You gotta oh my God, I can't.
You looked at my bio and you said, what the heck? Why did this guy work at that place for 9 months? Right. So that I think you're getting it, which is, I mean, you're the inverse of that question of why not a big company and why I'm attracted to growth firms, is that, there's this line, I forgot his name. He was the director of photography, what's now called the cinematographer for Citizen Kane. So, okay, greatest movie on like almost everybody's list of all time. And Orson Welles came in to make this thing, write it, directed it and started it, of course. And yeah, had no film experience whatsoever. And he hired a bunch of people from radio. He was a radio person. Yeah. And then he was going around, taking an axe to the floor to put the camera lower in the ground and telling, so he was telling the DP what to do. And everyone was kind of mortified because that's not the way it was supposed to go. Like the director of photography set up the camera. That was their deal. And this person, I think, had won Oscars actually. And he was like, no, let him go, because you don't know what someone's going to do when they don't know what the rules are.
Yeah, that's innovation, man. It's beginner's mind.
That's it. That's the whole deal. So for me, I just like people who don't like give a blank and just kind of can just roll with it I don't know if this is a family friendly podcast. I want to keep it.
It is most of the time.
if I get into the stand up mode, then I'll start losing it. I'll lose your audience. So I'll keep me in check. But yeah, no, I just love people that are just doing new things. It's just an exciting place to be. So that's and then the inverse of that is when I've worked at the larger companies, I would ask questions and they'd say, "What do you just shut up?"
Yeah. We're unemployable. That's where we end up. We end up in this unemployable space.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm really curious about this. So you work in growth and marketing, expanding, people's, revenues, et cetera. When do you know that something is going wrong and you need to change? I mean, how much time do you give something before you decide, well, this isn't working, I got to do something different?
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. We're talking about failure, maybe at some level. It could be tactical failure that just needs a new direction, or it could just be overall, market product fit failure. That is just, we're trying to do something that shouldn't be there. Yeah. So part of the job of the consultant, it's a funny thing because for us to be successful, I'm going to take a long walk to get to this answer, but I think we'll get there. So for us to be successful, we have to treat our clients' dreams as if they were our dreams, their passions as if they were our passions, and their fears like they're our fears. And so when you do that, you embody the client in the ideal state. You embody the client's desires such that you have that same ambition that they have. And we know that entrepreneurship is fueled by relentless optimism. Now, you said,
if I wasn't optimistic, I would not be in this business.
That's your the title. That's your title, right? So, optimism is what drives entrepreneurship, right? Because most businesses fail, and if they looked at the statistics, they wouldn't do it. But they say, no, that doesn't apply to me. I'm not the, what is it?
I'm going to be in the 10% that survives or something like that, right? Yeah.
80% of the people think that they're better than average of whatever category you want to, looks or whatever. So it's like we don't understand reality, and entrepreneurs have almost that blind optimism. Now, our job is to have that with them, as I said, as a consultant. But the other thing they hired us for is to be a third-party external set of eyes. So when they're going one direction, we go, why? What if this? And so it's not just what if, they've already done the what if for the market, which is this thing should exist. And so they've done the hard part, really. Now what we do is say, what if your direction would go a different way? So it's easy as a consultant to say, well, I'm getting paid, so I'm just gonna keep, I don't want to ruffle feathers here. But that's not our job. Our job is to fundamentally, with energy and optimism, ruffle feathers on tactics to make sure that we're approaching things the best way possible. So I don't know. Did I get back to the question? Did I make it back to what you wanted?
Not quite.
How do you know when it doesn't work? I don't know when you. I don't know.
See, the right answer. I think that's the right answer there. Because every situation is different, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, you see it. It's like, yeah, I guess maybe I'm struggling because it's not working because there ain't results. And so that the hard part, and I guess is why I've gravitated to the part of the answer is, what do you do about it? And I think that what you do about it is you have to take a fresh set of eyes to approach a new pathway.
Well, it's kind of like there's two aspects to entrepreneurship. So it's one, you hear, no one's an overnight success, right? So or there's a 20-year overnight success. So you got to just keep going at it. Eventually you'll succeed. And then the flip side is that, some people are successful immediately, because you see things where people have been doing something for 20 years and they get no traction. And then you get other people who get traction within, a few months.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you know when to pivot or to do something different?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is why I went there. So I was thinking about my own failure with breakaway education, which is that I couldn't find a model it was very hard to find a funding model. We made revenues, but it was a nonprofit, and the purpose was to, we were going to generate some fees for service, and there were some grants that were directly applicable to this. But we knew that it was going to largely be funded through external donations, and for whatever reason, I never got the community in the philanthropic world to back it. In a way, I don't want to dismiss the very generous grants and gifts we did receive, but from a sustainable
back it sufficiently.
Yeah, it was insufficient. Yeah. And what I had to realize was to take a third party view. So I was never going to admit that this wasn't, I had pivoted, 8 times to try to get to where I thought it would work. And it took my wife, who had said to me, if you were advising a client on this business, what would you say? And that was then I realized that it wasn't worth further investment, because I wasn't able to get it through to a place where there was rapid adoption. Like it needed more scale for it to work. And there's all kinds of reasons for that, but that was the reality. And so that's why I said, how do you know? It's when you take that third party kind of objective view. So I think part of the case I'm making here is that as an entrepreneur, you should never admit defeat, but you need to bring around you a panel of people that you trust that will tell you when it is time to throw in the towel and go for the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise known as bring in the wife. I do that all the time.
in my case. Yeah. She's like, it's time for you to get a job.
Yeah. You do need that alternative perspective, because a lot of times when you're an entrepreneur, you've got this, laser focus on what you're trying to do. And if something goes wrong, you're like, oh, forget that. When you actually should be more opportunistic and go, okay, maybe we should do this, because this is the tiny little feature that everyone loves. Maybe we should just focus on that particular thing. And I think that's where some of the most successful ones come from, is that, they've been able to identify the thing that they need to pivot to because it matches the customer desire. And the others are like, oh, I'm just going to continue going on this way because this is my vision. Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's ultimately it, is, how do you know there's no results? What are results? The results are that there's adoption and, customers that are asking for this thing. And so in the education world writ large, I wasn't able to get enough of an adoption for what I was doing. And so that same, I had a vision, but the customers had a different one. And I can say they were wrong.
Right.
They were, but it doesn't matter. It's like, okay, they're wrong. You're right, but you don't have any customers.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, mine's half price, but I'm out today. I'd really like to know, are there any sort of like universal truths in the growth space? Like, this will always work. Is there anything like that? Or is it just like seat of the pants, depends on the product, depends on the market, depends on everything? Is there anything that you can say, this will definitely work, even if it doesn't work a lot, it'll give you like some kind of an uplift? Is there anything in that world that is like that today?
Well, obviously, Chris, there's no like single tactic.
I'm not looking for like one quick tip or technique. I'm just saying, is there anything like standardized that works across the board? Like when you come up with a new client, do you say, oh, let's try these 5 things?
Right. There are frameworks that we apply that will always work. So the most important, the key to growth is that you have an engaged customer that has enough people that looks like them.
Right.
And that of course, attitudinally and behaviorally would adopt similar actions if given the chance and if given the awareness.
Right.
So you have to build a product that is hyper focused on that target, and then go and find the other people that look like that person and act like that person and behave like that person. So that customer centrality is the thing that always works, because the customer will tell you exactly what you need to do. And if you follow that customer, they'll lead you to success. I think if you go to Nike's headquarters, I'm told, in Oregon, they have, follow the athlete or listen to the athlete. And that's that the product design will come from the person that gets the most benefit from your product. Their target. Nike's always been focused on target, on their target demographic. I heard I might misquote it because it was, I think I heard it, live, so I didn't have access to the tape of the guy saying it, but it was the global, I'm going to mess up his title too, but it was like a global head of brand for Nike. This is in business school. And he said, almost as an aside, he goes, we have to stay focused at Nike on our target, which is a 16-year-old male urban athlete.
Right.
And, you look around, like, we all have Nikes. Everyone's got a Nike. Like, we got something from Nike. Everyone does. I mean,
but everybody also wants to be a 16-year-old urban athlete.
And exactly. So if you focused on that brand, I'm like, that was about as good as it gets when you were a kid playing sports, and that's it. So that kind of focus is always the right answer. Now, where you see a lot of people miss it is they say, okay, yeah, the product, it's all focused around this person, but then they go and message it. And what do? The first thing you see, go pick any website. First thing they do on their website is they talk about their product.
Yeah.
So they lost the customer immediately. It was supposed to be about the customer. They said they designed the product about the customer, but then they said, oh, let me tell a story. And the main character of this story is my fidget spinner or my iPhone, right? That's the main character is the iPhone. It's never been the iPhone. The main character is the person who uses it. The main character is your customer. Yeah. So when we speak to it, we got to say the customer's journey and speak to the value proposition and their Clay Christensen, jobs to be done. So what is the job that they're going to use your product for to achieve progress, and that they're going to hire your product for to achieve progress? That does work every time, in the sense that directionally, obviously, there's the tactics that fall out of that are, you have to have really great marketing copy that speaks to that customer journey. You have to make sure that your product is available in a way that a customer could actually use it. You need to make sure in your sales process that you don't talk about yourself and your building or your degrees or anything that they don't care about. You talk about them. Yeah. So you were supposed to list, sales is about listening. Sales is about finding what their needs are, right? So at every step of the process, we have to make sure that that customer is the only thing that matters. Yeah. And if we do that, then we will always have success, unless we made a mistake somewhere along the way. Like the product isn't actually something the customer wants. Well, that's, again, part of the same framework.
Well, do you start? I noticed you mentioned targeting there. Targeting is super important. So, but you can't just target. You have to target, and you have to have product, and these things have to match. It's like product market fit, right? You go, who exactly am I targeting? And then how, so let's thinking about target first. How defined do you need to be? I mean, is it really, you got to niche it down to as small a niche as possible? And same for the product?
Yeah. Okay. Let's make that mistake. And here's why. Because most people make the mistake of thinking it's for everybody. And so they never do the work of trying to actually figure out who this thing actually is a fit for. Right. Now, of course, if you own, again, Nike's not selling just to, I buy Nike. I like to go long distance running. I buy my shoes every 6 months. So I buy Nikes, and they're happy to have me. They're not complaining. They're not turning me away. So you got, again, that focus is about making sure that the value can spread outward. But when you're a startup, again, if you think you're for everyone, you're for no one. So we have to really figure out who's that group, that as long as it's not so niche that they're not significant, they have to you have to have that immediate addressable market. But then, of course, from there, think of logical outflows where you can expand without losing that core audience that got you there.
Right. And then do you start with the product or do you start with the target?
I think so. It's chicken egg. I don't know. I think that's kind of the innovator's predilection, right? Because what's important is that you want to think through multiple aspects of the same thing, right? In comedy, this is, you might have a really good joke, and then what a more seasoned comic, when they listen to it, they'll say, "That's great, mine that." And then they talk about mining in comedy, which is, you looked at it from this perspective. Well, keep going. Like, what about this? Or what if you looked at it over there? Or why doesn't it do that? Or take it further, take it to more an absurd, kind of conclusion. And that often doesn't happen when someone goes and they have an experience. And they start with the product, where they go, what typically people do, the mistake is not starting with product or market. The mistake people make is they start with themselves and they end with themselves. Yep. So they go to a restaurant and they go, that table over there my table doesn't have salt and pepper and the other table does. And so there should be an app that like solves that problem, or I don't know. Like, they just have some kind of weird like experience, and then they like create a whole company around it.
Yeah. Hey, well, Elon Musk does it. Whenever he has a problem, he creates a company around it.
He just starts a new, he's like, man, I got to get to my house faster. I'm going to create a tunnel. Yeah. It's like, so, okay. Yeah. Elon Musk. Great. He does that.
You've got to be a billionaire to
it helps if you have enough money to start. Yeah. So, but really listening is the point. And I think one of the big points there is like, okay, we live as consumers. We don't live as businesses. Yep. So what most people miss is the B2B opportunities that exist, because they're not mining enough. They see an initial entry point and they're thinking of that as a consumer in terms of a need. What they really need to do is mine around that problem and then get to the place where it's now a larger market problem. And typically that's going to happen when businesses have problems. So heretofore, I've been talking about consumer examples like Nike, but the better way to do it would be to think about what is the business case for, some sort of desire that you have, and then how do you get businesses, because there's much more needs, and then they have much more budget than consumers.
Right. And in the companies you work with, do you only work with startups?
No. So right now I have two startups, three startup, whatever. So it's typically 50-50. So I've got about 3 startups and about 3, going concerns. They've been, around for 20 years or whatever, but they typically have a similar need, which is they're acting like a startup. Mm-hmm. So even if they're larger and bigger, or they're, they've been around the block and they know what to do, they bring in Kasvaa because they're like, I need to do this thing that's totally new. So how do we do that in a way that's gonna essentially bring new market innovation? So they are a startup. They're just doing it with a basis of more existing funds. Right.
So do you use the same framework for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, it's the process is similar, but of course each group has their own intricacies you got to figure out.
Right.
But yeah. Consultants work off frameworks, right? Because that's how we can organize our thoughts. But frameworks aren't meant to be prescriptions. They're meant to be ways of approaching thought, so that way we can engage in a way that's relevant to the case at hand, the client.
So how do you market yourself? Like, what's your lead generation strategy?
How do we market at Kasvaa?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually something I need to, I've been resourcing up to finally get there, and so far this first year has been largely through referrals, but it's ironically the work that we do for our clients, I've yet to fully apply to to my own company. We've been busy. Thankfully been busy. So if one of these clients want to fire me, then I could just work on marketing. No, but
Well,
we
okay,
started
let's see this
the
then.
process, but it's the same thing. I mean, you gotta, so you gotta think about how transactional your product is. I, have the least transactional thing, which is that it's like grow your company.
Yeah.
Right. So growing your company.
Talk about wishy-washy messaging, man. You gotta
like if I send you a message and say, hey, do you want to grow your company? You're gonna delete it, or you're gonna like be like, yeah, but but why you and what and why are you
exactly.
It's so to that end, what am I talking about is that it's this, what marketers talk about is nurturing or top of the funnel, middle of the funnel activities. So you have to be willing, in sales, they say you got to kiss a lot of frogs. Okay.
Burn some shoe leather.
Yeah. It's true, but it's like that's such a negative view on it. Like maybe you could just be a person and a company that's interested in others. And you do that by having great conversations with, you and I had a great conversation previous to this call, this podcast. And, you try to be open to a network that's not your current network, right? So that's how these things go. Now, you can't scale yourself and your time, but you can scale a lot of digital touch points that aren't that, it's not that they are, you have to leverage your digital presence in a way that gets in front of more people. Mm-hmm. And you can say that there's all kinds of lead generation tactics, and you get an email from someone and it says, hey, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and just thought, man, woo, we got to talk, right? Okay, well, they probably didn't look at my LinkedIn profile. Some bot did, or somebody, okay. So you could say that
thousands of those messages go out.
Yeah. You could say it's duplicitous, but I actually think if you're targeting well and you're taking the time to really curate a list, I don't think that's wrong at all. And I think you can actually start a relationship in a digital fashion and actually nurture in a digital fashion in a way that's totally legit. I mean, I believe, that I have a relationship with Mookie Betts, the right fielder of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, he doesn't know me, but like, he probably would love me. And also, I know him. Like, I know who he is. He's he's joy incarnate in baseball, and he's just maybe the best player. All no offense to Mike Trout, maybe the best player that's played since Griffey, and he's a phenomenal specimen to watch, and he's on the team that I like, and it's great. Now, is that like somehow dishonest of him to like send out Instagram posts and do no, he's being himself in a larger context. Now, what you then have to do in the world of sales, he doesn't need me, so it'll stay at that level. But if you're trying to actually get to like monetization, making money, then at some point you got to turn the corner. And business is and always will be about human beings and people. So at that point, you got to make yourself available and be fully present for a phone call. And that phone call can be 20 minutes. And if it's a good 20 minutes and you're open, then that could be the source of everything for both parties. That's how this business works in terms of lead generation. You got to talk to people.
Right. Yeah, you can't just sit behind your screen and send out tweets.
It doesn't work. At some point, you can start that, and that's the idea of the nurture. But at some point, you got to get them to say, you know what? Why don't we talk? Let's just see if there might be a fit, if there might be something where we can help each other.
Right.
And to me, that's sales, and that's the most noble profession on the planet, because it's very easy to sit behind your computer and tweet. It's very easy to stand back and be like, they're all just going to say no, or everyone's going to reject me, and it's never going to work. But the salesperson steps out into all that chaos and all that potential rejection and says, you know what? I'm willing to get rejected. I'm willing to take the first move. I'm willing to be made a pariah and have the horrible reputation that I clogged your inbox with another email. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to intrude on all that, because you know what? I know that my company helps people. we make people's lives better. We bring joy. We bring them innovation. We help them be better people so they can go back to their families and have better lives with their families. That's a good thing to do. So I don't have a problem going up to them and saying, maybe we should try this. It might not work, but let's try.
Yeah.
Let's try.
I still don't understand how so many companies treat their salespeople so poorly. Right? They just give them quotas. They hit the quotas. They give them more quotas. They hit the quotas, and they just keep driving them and tell them, "Oh my God, this guy's making too much money. We got to fire him." It's like, hey, excuse me.
You go do it then.
It's the hardest job, but it is the best. I mean, it is the influx of, without salespeople, you got nothing. You got nothing.
Yeah. But, and when we're talking about this digital versus physical thing, I mean, that's how apparent has this been? I don't want to be another cliche on this, but like with COVID and everything, like it's so obvious that now this is more than ever the time when picking up the phone and talking to someone, or again, safely now showing up and meeting someone in person and being able to form that connection. It's everything. And salespeople have always been the ones doing that versus hiding back and shirking in. So that's the glory of what salespeople bring. And yet you're right. We treat them like it's a transaction when they're actually the least transactional kind of people around. Now, obviously,
exactly.
We know about these, stereotypes. We get the call. It's like, hi, and then, okay, that person's being transactional. Yeah. And they lost it, but sales at its best, of course, is not that at all.
Yeah. So this is something that's I thought was very interesting, is that so the technology has really not progressed. I mean, there's still ways of communicating between sort of the supply and demand, but we haven't figured out an easy way to match that up. That's not, at least in my sense, is that's why my inbox is clogged with messages, because they don't know that these are things that I don't need right now. Right. I mean, we're in this amazingly technological world where, our devices know everything about us, and they know everything that we want.
They don't know our needs for, is it services needs that we don't know? Because you could argue that's, that products maybe have solved that problem a little bit, in that we have, very sophisticated ad technology that's able to find us and of course retarget us, and so they're sort of, again, it's not need based, although if you that's I mean, Google, right? Is that when you put out a query, that there's advertisements that are then served based on your query. So that's trying to match that. It's trying to do this thing we're talking about, which is match the need. That's what Google's kind of organized, right? Was meeting the need with the service provider. Of course, it's the one who paid the most to show up there, not necessarily the best one.
Exactly.
That problem, but that's just a marketplace. I mean, that's anything. But with services, you're right. Like, it's very difficult to advertise in a way that doesn't rely on branding or something that's, which is fine. You should do these things, but to really get to the place where, like, what's your need and when is your need and how do I find you then?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was a company I worked with a long time ago called Fuse Machines. I don't know if you've heard of these guys, but they promised AI-based lead generation. So what would happen is you give them like some description of what your company does, and they would go out and they would find people who were just about ready to buy, and then send them a set of drip campaigns. And it did not work.
I mean, every one of us have been, hit up every day by a lead generation company. Yeah. And it's funny, like, they don't even work at lead generation because, like, they're trying to hit me. So sometimes I'll reach back out and I'll do it in a way that's a little obscure. Yeah. To see if they can, like, so I'll make the request or I'll do it in a way that's like, oh, can you text me in 25 minutes or whatever? Like, I'll do something like to try to see if they can actually capture that in a way that a human being would be able to, like, meld with it and go with it. And of course it's not, it's just, it triggers the next trigger or whatever. And that's then right.
It's just a bot.
It's just a bot. And so you're like, oh, you're not able to get me in a way. Whatever technology or thing you're promising isn't doing it right now with me. So there's no way that you can actually be what you're saying you're going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm hoping that we get to some technology one day which is a little more sensitive to that and can actually say, you know what, this person would be perfect to solve your problem and vice versa. Because right now it just feels like the internet is like littered with sales messages that are just mistargeted. And I think sometimes Google mistargets on purpose because it brings them more cash, right? If they mistarget, if they target perfectly, then supply and demand is met and they don't make any money. But if they target, like if they slightly mistarget, then think of how many more ads are going to be served, right? Anyway, I'm just
No, that's right. Perfect information would enable less friction and therefore less transaction costs.
Yeah. So yeah. I'm gonna, before we start talking about the future, I want to talk a little bit about this your nonprofit. So you got into that because you were just interested in doing it, or have you had an educational background, or?
Yeah, actually, it's what I did. So I spent maybe 6-7 years working in mainly nonprofits in New York after my undergrad and before my business degree, and so it's kind of what I knew. And I went to business school, and that's what I wrote in my application. I want to start this nonprofit in my application to business schools. I probably should have lied and said I wanted to be an investment banker or something. I would have probably got more interest. I think they were like,
see, this is what happens when you tell the truth, man.
Yeah, you can't do that. So thankfully one of them was nice enough to let me in and even provided me grant opportunities to pursue it, which was pretty cool. Talking about UCLA, so go Bruins. Nice. Yeah, they were very supportive of that and realized that it kind of takes different minds to do stuff, and they gave me every chance to be successful. I wasn't, and then now I have a job that pays me money. So so I guess they won in the end. I don't know.
Well, you're supposed to end up with a nonprofit, not start with a nonprofit.
I think that was what everyone said. They're like, "Why are you doing this now? Why don't you go like make some money first?" So that's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to make some money now, and then the education thing. My wife is an educator. She still works in education, ed technology, but she works directly with teachers, supporting them using the technology in their classroom. So it's still something that we as a family live and breathe every day. Obviously we all do if you have children, which we do. And so it's something we care a lot about, and redesigning schools is something that I don't think I'm done with, and rethinking about how.
Tell me about it. The education system needs to be disrupted big time.
I want a school, Chris. I want a school that designs their school like Jobs invented this thing, and designed this thing. Yeah. Which is, he said at every moment, how do we think about customer centrality, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Why would we have 2 buttons when they could hit the wrong one? Let's give them 1 button and eventually no buttons, right? Yeah. Now, schools do everything exactly the opposite. And it's easy for me to say because it's the hardest job in the world. I'm not criticizing anyone, but we did the design of the school. Yeah. Literally the opposite of what a young person would want if they were to design it. It starts at like in the 7s. I don't know a young person who ever wants to get up in the 6s or 7s. That's when they start the thing. So they're starting off on a great start right there. Okay. Yeah. Then they put them all in like rows or whatever. Like they make them look a certain direction, or in some schools they march them around. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, I know a lot of kids that love marching, It's like so
it's their favorite thing.
I think you might have had a question that I never let you ask. Education is still very much a passion for me, but we're not even close to designing things in a way that really thinks about the customer, the consumer in this case, which is the young person, the child.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So let's start talking. Let's do the Think Like a Futurist. So it's the year 2031. So what's the world going to be like? What's sales going to be like? What's growth going to be like? And go.
I started thinking about this when you were asking about how sales has never been able to match that level of human connection that we, by using any kind of AI tools. So I want to be optimistic because of who you are and your name for this. So I want to try to think about that from that lens.
You can go negative too if you
want. Let me start with the negative. Let me start with what could happen if we don't think harder. So the negative is that we keep doing what we're doing with technology, and it basically the innovations enable us to be lazier. Like that's maybe not the full word, but it's like more convenience and more organization for the purposes of creating more chaos, right? So we actually just, what we want to do is like, think about something like all these apps like Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever. Like, what are they doing? Like, they're solving a problem that enables us to get food in our face faster when there's food. We live in the greatest, we can get food anywhere and we can make it. And Alice Waters is celebrating the 50th anniversary of Chez Panisse, right? One of the greatest chefs that's changed food in the U.S. for the good. And you know, it's like they fast food and everything. They made this idea that food was somehow hard to accomplish when it's like the most fundamental thing that human beings have ever done, right? We like eat,
or at least should be able to do, right?
We do that. Like that's what you have to do it. It's like a human requirement. And then they innovated around making that seem like it was somehow too difficult, which is insane. So flash forward 10 years, technology keeps making us create things that we thought we did as humans, and they're like, oh, you can't do that anymore. You got to do it through technology so that you can have more time back, so that you can do more other stuff that isn't actually human.
That's right.
Right.
I was talking about this the other day.
That's like the Aldous Huxley version.
What we're doing now is we're creating solvable problems, right? So we know the solution, that we're just creating the problem for the solution. So instead of actually looking at the problems that we've got, we're creating new problems, and then we're solving them because we know the solution for those problems. So yes, do we really need another food delivery app? No, we don't. But we have 10 of them on our phone, right?
Yeah, it's the guy who breaks your window and then sends you the business card for the glass service, right? It's like
exactly.
Yeah, it's that's what we're doing. At most of our innovations are kind of that way. Now that's way too dismissive, especially for the work I do every day. So I would never say that about my own clients. But we got to think deeper about human empathy and human connection, and what are we actually trying to accomplish. So the optimist view, I'm clouded a lot right now. I'm reading Shirley Turkle's Reclaiming Conversation, right? So she talks about, it took us a while with the car. Like we were just like, cool, like this thing's awesome. Yeah. And then we were like, should we get seatbelts, or like, should we do anything else? Like maybe, and so safety took a long way. And I'm actually working with a client that's fantastic, that's solving a real safety problem right now, which is that people on the side of the road get hit because people don't see them. Yeah. And so they've created both, they've created a physical means through the flashing light, that by increasing the hertz, you can actually see the light better, and so it's more conspicuous, and therefore is going to reduce accidents on the side of the road.
Nice. Yeah,
it's awesome. And they also have digital communication, so they can communicate that out through there's a lot of technology that's enabling communication between cars. So this stuff already exists. We just have to deploy it, and that's what they're working on. It's awesome.
Isn't that the case for everything? Everything exists. We just have to deploy it.
Yes, so, it's all there.
Nobody can make any money off it, and that's why they don't deploy it, right?
Yeah, and then they've found a great way to monetize it as well. But they're gonna make a lot of money, and they're gonna save a lot of lives. So
excellent.
Great company. It's called ESS. Check it out. The notion about solving problems. Okay, so most people, they like you say, they're a problem in search of a solution, or they're a solution in search of a problem, and they go out with this like innovation that they go then try to figure out how to back into what the challenge is. I think with I was riffing on auto, but and then I got to ESS. So auto, with cars, it took us a long time until we figured out like, how do we actually do this in a way that's sustainable for lives, and we started to encourage people to drive safer, not drive drunk, all this stuff. And the same thing is happening, and again, this is from Turkle, the same thing is happening right now with technology, that we've only had the internet for 25 years, right? So we have now, we've only had it mobile apps since what, 2010, 9 or whatever, right?
2008.
Yeah. I mean, the phone came out in 2007, and then whatever. So then shortly thereafter, they opened up apps to third-party developers, and it's like this is all very new. We've only had social media at this scale for 10 plus years or whatever. Where it's all new. So I don't think we know what we're doing at all as a human species. We're just like, oh my, we're just all on drugs.
I think you're right. I think that's sort of the root of all our problems, is that we don't know what we're doing. It's
just like we just gave, if you gave someone, they've never had alcohol and you give them a drink, it's just fantastic. Like it's the most amazing thing ever. Now, you do that too much, you will have problems and you will hurt people and you'll hurt yourself. So that's where we're at with tech. So what I'm hopeful is that we will find a way to design better products and services that actually do the promise, not of giving us time back, the elusive time just so you can do more, but actually give you meaningful experience back. So they're trying to get you to work to get you more with your family. They try to be less intrusive. Like we have push notifications. Yeah. We're saying we're pushing you. Like pushing shouldn't be allowed. I don't let my kids push. Yeah. They should be, maybe, what if all of the pushes were collected in a way that I could experience all of them in 5 minutes and quickly look through and deal with all of the information? We've kind of done that with desktop, like all these great tools like Asana and Slack and all that. They're supposed to be organizing the frenetic world of the internet and of how we work. And I don't know if they're really doing it, but that's what they're trying to do. With mobile, we haven't done any of that. So mobile has an opportunity to think about how do we organize our mobile experience so that we're not just constantly glued and looking, my phone's been sitting here the whole time. And research says that if my phone is near me, I'm not going to be present with you as much because I'm thinking about other things going on, notifications, other stuff I have to do. So really finding a way to almost turn the phone off and then come on for those moments where it makes sense based on my schedule. They have my calendar. They can come in. The AI could then tell me when I'm available to look at certain things. And then they could push me the breaking news that I need to know about because I want to know the news. They can push me the memory, the memories from Facebook. They can push me the important tweets that just came out that are somehow so important. Like this, they could do all that in a more efficient way, but they don't. Everyone's just allowed to go like, hey. And that's not fair. And so I think technology that allows us to actually be more human and present with people when we're talking to them, that's our answer. Yeah.
Well, see, what I think we should do is, so there are these virtual assistants or these assistants out there like Alexa and Google, whatever, but they all work for Google or Amazon. What we need is a personal AI that works for us and sort of sits between us and all of these notifications, and then takes the notifications and then just sort of filters through the important stuff when it knows we need to see it. And they can also take other functions, like I would say, hey, Alexa, I need to buy a new couch. And they would go out and do all that work for me and then present me with like 3 options, which it knows I would like. So, I think that's where the future of sales is. You're going to be selling to these AIs, but nobody's done that yet, unfortunately, because I want to see that.
And knowing when the human element needs to come in, because you want to sit in a couch and you also want to talk with people who have had similar couches.
Exactly.
Like we don't know how to make decisions about anything. They've done research on this where, the best way to make a decision is to embed yourself, not to experience what people always thought it was, is you got Stanford in the back. Okay, you got into Stanford. Great. You think you might want to go to school there. Great. Go spend a random arbitrary day where they're going to treat you really well. And they're going to take you to the classes where like the best professor is lecturing on something. And then, oh, by the way, here's Sergey Brin or whatever. It's like, none of that. Like, that's not how your life is going to be. They just create a weird day.
No. Yeah.
What you should do is go to someone like you who's been there, done that, spent a lot of time there, and then share your experience. What didn't go well? What was great?
Exactly. It's not all gravy.
Well, just like you just can't capture it in a little like microcosm. There's no such thing. So with couches, you want to, everything we do from buying. Think about how you buy a car. It doesn't make any sense. Like that's still human. Like we have to drive it, but there's this guy talking the whole time.
Yeah.
He won't shut up. Like that's not, I need my kids in the back screaming, fighting, I need that. That's the way you drive a car. Cause that's how I drive a car. Right.
Yeah, you drive it for 5 minutes, then you got to sit at his desk for 2 hours while he tries to push more things on you.
Yeah, he's still talking to you, and then they got, none of that's like, not car experience. We should. I mean, I like companies that have allowed people to drive them for, you should it should be part of the deal that everyone gets to drive a car for 2 weeks, and that should you shouldn't be able to make a decision of that consequence unless you've had experience with it in like the real settings of which you will have it.
I think we should do the same for job postings. It's like forget about resumes,
hiring.
Forget about interviews. Just hire the guy for 2 weeks. At the end of those 2 weeks, if he sucks, then let him go. And
everyone should just work
those 2 weeks.
Everyone should know that you're going to work for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Yeah, cooking actually does that. They do a stagiaire, and then I worked in restaurants as well. Another
wow, look at this.
I've done too much.
You're a comedian. You're an entrepreneur. You're a restaurateur.
Do everything poorly. Yeah. So I worked in restaurants, and you can go into Danielle, one of the best restaurants in the world or whatever, and you can go in there and say, hey, I'd like to cook for you, and they'll let you cook for a day, and mainly you're watching, but you'll start to they'll have you do stuff and run around, and then they may not have you then, and they may have a spot for you, but that's how people get jobs, is by actually working for free.
Man, we should do that everywhere. I think
totally.
That's a great model for any kind of job, because you don't know how someone's going to perform based on a sheet of paper and an interview. You got to get them in there. You got to get them doing the work.
It's almost insanely bizarre that we think that a job interview has anything to do with like
exactly.
Like my wife once said, she's like, you're really great at getting jobs. Because you're a salesperson. Like, you can make them like you enough for 45 minutes. That doesn't mean they're going to want to like working with you 6 months from now.
I love it. Oh, this has been great, but I got to wrap it up. So thank you so much. This has been fantastic. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Yeah. So Kasvaa.co, it's KASVAA, crazy finish. But they can email me, Stephen, STEPHEN at Kasvaa.co. Call me, whatever. It's all out there on the internet. So
yeah, I'll put all the contact info in the show notes. So
yeah, I'll send you some stuff
directly. This has been great. Thank you so much. Thanks, I want to get you back on. We haven't talked about your comedy stuff at all. Maybe you could do like
we'll do a show soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Man.
Have a good one.